The samurai's sword was still wet. Blood cooled on the blade, darkening from red to rust. He'd killed 3 men that morning, clean cuts, honorable deaths, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He found the monk at noon sitting outside a temple gate, old, small, wearing robes that had been mended so many times they were more thread than fabric. The samurai stood over him, casting shadows. "Tell me," the warrior said, his voice hard, "about heaven and hell." The monk didn't look up, didn't move, just sat there, breathing slowly, like the question was a leaf that had fallen and would fall again. The samurai's jaw clenched, his hand drifted to his sword. "I asked you a question, monk." Still nothing, just that infuriating stillness. The warrior's face flushed hot, his heart hammered. He'd been shown respect his entire life, fear really, disguised as honor. Men bowed when he walked past, stepped aside, looked down. But this monk, this old, ragged nothing of a man, he sat like the samurai didn't exist. "Answer me." The samurai's voice cracked like breaking wood. The monk finally raised his head, looked at the warrior with eyes that held neither fear nor respect, just observation, like looking at weather. "You," the monk said softly, "you want to understand heaven and hell? Look at you, a brute, a killer. Your sword is sharper than your mind, your hands are stained, and so is your soul." The samurai's vision went white at the edges. His sword left its sheath before thought, before breath, before anything but pure molten rage. The blade sang as it rose, both hands gripping the handle, muscles coiled to split this disrespectful old fool from shoulder to hip. The arc began, death half a second away. And the monk spoke again. "There," he said gently, "that's hell." The sword stopped, hung in the air, trembling. The samurai's breathing came in gasps. His whole body shook now, not with rage but with the sudden, crushing weight of seeing himself, seeing what he'd almost done, seeing the hell he'd been living in without knowing, the pride, the need to be respected, the violence that came so quick, so easy, the moment his ego was pricked. The sword lowered, slowly, impossibly heavy now. Tears came, hot, shameful. He dropped to his knees in the dust, the sword falling beside him. "And that," the monk said, his voice warm now, almost tender, "is heaven." The samurai stayed on his knees. He couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only feel the space that had opened inside him when the rage collapsed. The monk had shown him both gates in less than a minute. Hell, the burning, the blindness, the need to destroy, and heaven, the moment of seeing, of stopping, of choosing something other than the violence his ego demanded. Neither place was somewhere else. Both were right here. Both were always available. We think heaven and hell are destinations, rewards and punishments, places we go after death based on how well we behaved, how hard we prayed, how many rules we followed. But the monk knew different. Hell is not a location, it's a state. The state of being ruled by ego, by the need to be right, to be respected, to be more than someone else, to protect the fragile story we tell ourselves about who we are. The ego is not evil. It's just terrified. Terrified of being small, of being wrong, of being ignored or dismissed, or seen for what it really is. A collection of thoughts pretending to be solid, a story pretending to be truth. So it fights, defends, attacks, builds walls and weapons, makes enemies out of anyone who questions it, threatens it, fails to bow before it, and every moment you live from that place, you're in hell. The samurai returned the next day, unarmed this time. He sat across from the monk, who was in the same position, like he'd never moved. "Teach me," the warrior said. The monk smiled faintly. "I already did. No, teach me how to stay in heaven, how to not fall back into hell." "You will fall back," the monk said. Again and again, the ego doesn't die from one moment of seeing. It regroups, rebuilds, comes back stronger, smarter, more subtle. The samurai's face fell. "So I'm trapped, doomed to keep returning to hell no matter what I do?" "No, you're doomed to keep having the choice. That's different." The monk leaned forward. "Yesterday, when I insulted you, your ego rose up instantly. It took control, made you into its weapon. You were gone. Just anger piloting a body, swinging a sword." The samurai nodded, ashamed. "But then," the monk continued, "you stopped. Something in you recognized hell for what it was, and you chose differently. That choice, that's the gate to heaven. That's always the gate, but how do I recognize it faster? Before I draw the sword, by knowing what hell feels like in your body. The samurai looked confused. The monk gestured to the warrior's chest. When I called you a brute, what did you feel? Before the thought, before the rage had words, the samurai closed his eyes, remembering. Heat, he said slowly. In my face, my chest, like fire spreading. Yes, that's the signal. That's your body telling you the ego is taking over. Heaven or hell isn't decided by whether that heat appears. It's decided by what you do when you feel it. If you believe it, if you let it tell you what it means, what you should do, who you need to punish, you're choosing hell. And if I don't believe it, then you notice it, feel it, let it burn without acting from it. Watch it rise and pass like a wave. That noticing, that space between the feeling and the action, that's heaven. The samurai practiced, not with a sword, with his attention. He'd feel the heat of ego when someone disrespected him, when he felt overlooked, when his honor seemed threatened, and he'd pause, just for a breath, just long enough to recognize the feeling without becoming it. Sometimes he succeeded. The heat would rise and he'd let it feel it fully. It would peak, then fade, leaving him clear. Other times he failed. The ego was faster, smoother. It would slip in and take over before he even knew it was happening. He'd say something cruel, do something violent, react from the wound instead of the wisdom. But each time he failed, he'd remember the monk's words. This isn't failure, this is the practice. Hell and heaven aren't permanent states. They're choices you make 1,000 times a day. Years passed. The samurai became known not for his skill with a sword, but for his stillness, his ability to be insulted without retaliating, to be challenged without needing to prove anything. People called it enlightenment. He called it practice. One day, a young warrior came to him, angry, seeking the same teaching the samurai had once sought. "Where are the gates of heaven and hell?" the young man demanded. The samurai looked at him, saw himself decades ago, saw the pride, the fear beneath it, the suffering the young man was creating and calling strength. He could tell him gently, explain patiently, lead him carefully to understanding. But that's not how the teaching worked. "You," the samurai said, his voice cold, "you're too stupid to understand heaven, too weak to survive hell. Go home before you embarrass yourself further." The young warrior's hand went to his sword, and the samurai smiled. "There," he said softly, "right there, that feeling in your chest, that need to hurt me for hurting you, that's hell." The young man froze, his face collapsed, understanding breaking over him like a wave. The sword stayed in its sheath. "And that," the samurai said, "is heaven. Your ego will offer you hell every single day, multiple times. It will dress it up as justice, as self-respect, as necessary defense. It will make hell feel righteous, but hell is still hell, even when it feels justified. Heaven isn't about never feeling the heat, never feeling insulted or dismissed or wounded. Heaven is feeling it and choosing not to live from it, feeling it and recognizing it as ego, not truth, feeling it and watching it pass without needing to make someone else feel it too. The gates aren't somewhere else, aren't after death, aren't rewards for good behavior. They're here, now, in every moment you're triggered, in every moment your sense of self feels threatened. Hell is believing you are your ego. Heaven is remembering you're not. The old monk eventually died. The samurai sat with his body, remembering that first meeting, the insult, the rage, the sword that almost fell. He bowed to his teacher one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, "for showing me hell. Because once you've seen it, really seen it, felt it, recognized it for what it is, you can't unsee it. The ego will still rise, the heat will still come. The need to defend, to attack, to prove, to dominate. But now you know what it is, and knowing is the beginning of choosing. The gates of paradise are inside you, so are the gates of hell. Neither is locked. You walk through one or the other with every breath, every reaction, every moment your ego is pricked, and you decide what to do with the pain. Choose carefully. The sword is always halfway out of its sheath. The question is only whether you let it fall." Silence. I'm so glad we could share these quiet moments together. If this story helped you find a little more space in your day, I'd love to have you walk with us again. Feel free to subscribe and join our community. Thank you for being here with me. Take care of yourself, and stay peaceful.